What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I'm one of your two hosts. I'm Scott Leese, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host Richard Harris. Together, we make the Surf and Sales Podcast, and we're brought to you this month by our good friends at Gong, a game changer for sales leaders, as well as Vidyard and lead411.com, as well as Salesforce Sales Cloud. And we're here with a guy we haven't talked to in a long time. At least I haven't talked to him in a long time. I think we just figured out it's been a few years, which is bad on me for not reaching out sooner, Brandon. We're here with Brandon Redlinger, the Senior Director of Product Marketing at RingDNA. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Yeah, it's good to be here, guys. So I think this is kind of coming full circle. I had both of you on my podcast 5 years ago when Ben Sardella and I were doing the podcast when I was at Persist IQ. He was at Data Nice. It's coming full circle.
We need to have Ben on here too. I haven't talked to Ben in
it's been 5-6 years. So I think
it's been
the last time that we talked, actually, man. So.
Yeah, I was going to say something bad about Ben, but I guess I can't unless he's here. It makes it less fun just behind his back.
You can. We don't care. We're not going to.
We'll send him your comments, and then we'll bring him on the show, and he can fire back.
So, right.
Yeah, there you go.
Brandon, let's start here. Tell everybody, who's listening, what the heck a senior director of product marketing does. What is product marketing specifically, and tell us a little bit about your role and RingDNA so people have some context.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, RingDNA, we basically help people drive more revenue per sales hour. And we do that with a suite of products that help people be more productive, more efficient, helping sales coaches coach their reps better. And specifically what I'm doing in product marketing. So the way that I see product marketing, and I actually get this question a lot. I think product marketing is one of those things that's kind of like just now really coming into mainstream a little bit more and becoming a spotlight on teams. But so there's like, the way that I see product marketing is 5 real like key pillars. You are doing market research and gaining insights. You're doing like the messaging, the positioning of your product and your company. A big part of it is sales enablement. So I work very closely with my sales team and my sales development team. There are like your go-to-market strategy and launches, right? When you're launching new products, you're bringing products into market. And then the 5th pillar, sometimes it's in product, sometimes it's in marketing, sometimes it's in sales. But wherever it sits, it should be a key part of product marketing as well. And it's pricing and packaging, how you actually price and package your products and your services. So yeah, those are the real 3 or the 5 key pillars that I see go into product marketing.
I'd love to dive into pricing and packaging. I don't know that we've ever really gone deep on this topic in all of our 250 plus So and this is really relevant for people who are early stage founders or sales leaders or whoever, because sometimes I just feel like, what do you think we can sell this thing for, right?
Yeah,
that becomes the number where you start. So how does one go about properly figuring out what do you put in these packages? What do they cost and why? Give us some of the theory and practical advice there.
Yeah, so the thing that you really have to start out figuring out first is it's called a value metric. But like as this goes up, what's the value that the customer is seeing? So a good example that's often used is the more emails that you collect for a marketing automation system, the more value that the customer is going to see, right? So the more emails, the more names, the more like contacts that you can collect, like it's going to be more valuable to them. So that's why you see like Marketo or HubSpot or Pardot, they actually charge on actual contacts that you keep in your marketing automation systems. But this actually, it gets more complicated if you have product suites or if you have like an ABM product, right? So I used to be at Engagio and Demandbase where we were ABM, but the more value that a company got from, or the more value that a company would get from an ABM solution, it's because they're doing more enterprise marketing, right? And enterprise are actually selling to fewer accounts. So how do you actually figure out what that value metric is? And there are a lot of things that go into this too. It's like, it's got to be pretty obvious to the end user.
So what, just as an example, right? Because this is all really good, but it's super high level, right? So if people are listening, if you were running a pricing and packaging, discussion for 30 minutes, what would be the 3 things that you'd want them to walk away with going, okay, this is what I need to know better? And when you say value metric, like what does that even mean, right? So, and I'm asking simply because we have a lot of salespeople listening and they don't understand what product marketing is doing, right? And so I want them to sort of get your side of why this matters to them.
Yeah. So yeah, your value metric is just like, what's the thing that, like, what, as they get more of these, things in your product, like, how does the value of your product go up? Right? Like, are the more emails that they send, it's the higher value, the more that they will get from your product? Is it the more calls that they make that they'll get more value from the product? Right? It's whatever the thing is that actually delivers the value for the customer. So when you're trying to figure out like my value metric, it's what's the value really that my product brings.
So I'm a RingDNA rep, and I need to understand that this particular part of the suite, right, whether, I don't know, auto dialer or recording, this piece delivers this value to my customer. And I need to articulate that value based on the pains that customer has around not being able to do it. Is that how you sort of try and determine the value metric?
It's not even how do you articulate to them. It's just like plain straight up, when they have more of these units, they see more value in your product.
Okay. And does that value mean money?
For them, it could mean value, could mean money, could be time saved, could be insights, like whatever value is in their mind. So that's why a lot of times this starts with interviewing your customers, talking to your customers, like specifically customers, right? And start with the customers that are most engaged with you. Could be highest daily active users. It could be just the company that's spending the most money with you. There's a lot of things that you could, like a lot of these indicators that a customer is a good customer. Now go talk to them, ask them what is the value that they're seeing in the product. What are the actual outcomes that they're getting?
So we're talking a lot about direct value, but there's also perceived value,
right?
As well, right? And so one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking was, the price increases that companies make over the course of the lifetime of the organization. What are the inflection points in your mind, where somebody can say double their costs, triple their costs, incrementally add it, make it larger? Because every sales leader out there is getting, ACV and average sales price, lift kind of goals, right? So like, how do you know when it's right to increase the prices?
So this is kind of a general rule, but it's almost like, where is the point when you as a leader start to feel a little bit uncomfortable in the increase, and then pick that number? It's like it's just beyond a little bit beyond comfort for you. But I also think there is a lot to be said about doing there's price sensitivity surveys out there, like the Van Westendorf survey. But if you do something like that, it is quite a longer engagement, and you will want someone, an outside third party vendor to help you with those if you've never done it before. But a lot of this honestly is like talking with customers and asking them questions. And honestly, it's asking them the same question in like 20 different ways. It's like, how much would you be willing to pay for this? And then figure out 20 different ways to ask that question. And then you can start to actually graph the numbers where they will stop paying for it.
Can you rename that report that you just mentioned?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Van Westendorp survey. And it's a price sensitivity survey.
Van what?
Van Westendorf.
Westendorf. Okay. Now here's my next question. This one's for you, Scott. Based on Brandon's assumption, how much would you raise your price to where you'd be uncomfortable? You don't have to give the number, but I'm curious what that makes you think.
It's interesting because I've always been somebody that I'm uncomfortable with raising it $1. Every incremental raise of the price, I always have this like, oh God, so much apprehension around. And we do it anyways. But to answer your question, Richard, probably 20-25%.
And that's usually what people end up at.
Oh, like, how about that?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I start to feel a little bit at 18 or 20%. Like, I really don't like my sales, I think, are going to drop.
So, Scott, now go back to your last gig of Qualia. Do you know, with what you know, and granted, it's been almost 2 years, since you were really officially there, would you go back and advise them based on this conversation? You should raise your prices 20%, see what happens.
I actually did this multiple times when I was there, and 20%. We did it a lot more than that, to be honest with you. So they probably could get away with it, knowing how that business is going and what's going on in that industry right now. I think a lot of people just undervalue themselves and their
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, we all are a little bit uncomfortable, I think, with saying I'm worth this and this much more. So especially some people or products that have a difficult time tracking an ROI as well. That's another piece of this that's kind of tricky. So
and one thing that we've been seeing recently too is like the service, like how you deliver their service. It's the team that matters a lot too, right? It's not the specific software that you sell them. It's like the relationship with the team. So we've been seeing this a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. It's like, I actually just really like them. I trust them. I trust their team, right? Like,
and that's worth X in terms of the value.
And that's so hard to quantify too. So that's why these price sensitive.
I mean, some people would pay more just to have that level of comfort with the services or feel that way, right?
100%. And yeah, it's crazy. Like I even remember not that long ago, a few months ago, buying a software. Like I knew that maybe they weren't the best out there, but I was most confident in that team. And I was most confident in my implementation manager because I've had software in the past before where I bought it, and I know I was only successful because I had a kick-ass implementation manager. I've had implementation managers before that were just like, here, do these things, whatever, check. And then you go out there and you're like, well, I still don't really know what I'm doing here. And you're going to fail. Like, doesn't matter if it's the best software out there or if it's a shitty software, you're going to fail. So that's why I think like relationships matter a lot in sales these days.
So
obviously.
The opposite of this would be the pricing objection. So what are some of the ways that the product marketers address the like, oh, that's too expensive kind of objection, the typical pricing objection? Is it different at all than how salespeople address those things? How do you think about that?
So yeah, as a product marketer, if I hear that, like I want to go listen to the calls when someone actually says that, right? Like I'm going to go listen to all of the calls. With RingDNA, I can easily just pop in and say, I'm looking for calls when they mention that. And then I want to listen to those calls. Like what's behind that? Is it the rep himself or herself didn't actually do that good of a job at describing the value? Or is it they are coming from a different software that was just really low end pricing, right? Like there's a lot that I want to dig into to see what's behind that. And am I really seeing a pattern? Is everyone saying it's too expensive because I haven't trained I, as a product marketer, haven't worked with my sales team to describe that value enough to tell the story. And honestly, a lot of times that's the case. Like, I, as a product marketer, want my positioning and my messaging and my company's story to land better than anyone else and everyone else out there. And then pricing almost becomes like details, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
so
want my team to sell the story.
Yeah, I'm gonna break this down, and I've been talking about this a lot more, is that, we need to get away from this phrase of objection handling, right? And nobody wants to be handled. Scott, I'm gonna handle you later today, right? Like, that doesn't make Scott happy. Like, I can see the look on his face, aside from just laughing about it, because he's like, you can't fucking handle me. But so what I tell, and pricing is one of those places, because oftentimes pricing comes up and then we try to like come up with this 1 or 2 sentences to object to their objection, right? And that's
Right.
what we're taught. And what I encourage people to do is, you don't handle objections, you marinate in them. You sit there and you ask more questions. Oh, what's your concern about that? Where's that?
Mm-hmm.
How could this be better? Right? And you end up asking more questions instead of trying to objection handle with statements. So that's like just sort of I think that's what good salespeople already know how to do, but it's just a different way to view it. So, but I like that. I like what you're saying of like, we got to dig in to see, is it the rep? Is it really the value? Is it, where is it missing?
And then if you come across that multiple times, then maybe go to your product marketing team and be like, hey, I need a little bit of help getting in front of this. What can you do as a marketing team to help me like prime the market a little bit better?
Yeah, I want to shift a little bit to sort of like, these questions are a little bit more like the relationship between product marketing and sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, the first one is, how do you know when the product's ready to be sold? Aside from, okay, it works, which right? How do you, is there something there? And maybe it's like, okay, we're going to price it MVP, right?
Yep.
How do you recommend that as a product marketer?
So usually when I'm launching a product, like I'll have an alpha or a beta group, right? And then like once and then during every beta group, I will set like my key performance metrics, and I also set my like, this is not ready to launch it. Like, a lot of people are just like, I'm going to do a beta. We're going to end it at the end of the quarter. Then we're going to launch. It's like, no, what are the things that actually tell me that my product is ready to launch? It could be active usage of your product. It could be emails that they send. It could be context that they put into your system. It could be, any of these different things, but you have to just define that up front and then make sure your customers actually hit those. And then once they hit those, then it's going to be ready to launch. And if they don't hit those, it's like, okay, did I set the wrong metrics, or is my product really not there? And you have to be honest with yourself. I think that's one of the hardest things, is like your head of product or your engineers are like, of course this is fucking ready. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm wondering if you guys, this is for both of you, do you think people try to go to market too soon, typically before the product is ready, or do you think they wait too long and try to put too much in and try to make it perfect before they go to market?
So I think if your leader is like, if your CEO is a salesperson, he'll try to push it too early. If your leader is a product person, he'll wait too long.
I think
I actually love that.
That's a really good.
That's what I think in my head. Like, I'm not a perfectionist. Like, let's fucking go. We can
Yeah.
And I'm the other way, right? Like, I'd be like, well, Scott, we can't do this yet. We can't do that yet. Like, I've also worked with Scott, and I've seen him pre-sell something that didn't exist.
Wait, a salesperson pre-selling something that's not ready yet? No, never.
Yeah.
And Scott, correct me, a team of 8 or 10, you guys closed about $100,000 in revenue before.
Yeah.
Right. So like
on the idea, when the product,
just on the idea of the concept. So this is,
they didn't have a demo. There wasn't even a demo of the product.
Yeah. So there was nothing there. And there eventually there was, but I want to talk to coming back to this relationship, right, of you and the sales team, getting feedback, right, whether it's pricing or anything else, right? Because oftentimes, I hear and this is the specific example when I'm training sales teams, is that, oh, it's really hard to sell up against this competitor because they do this way better than us, right? And sometimes they do, and sometimes, you do things better than your competitor. So you have to sort of dig in on that. And they're like, well, we can't get good messaging from product. I'm like, well, that's not sales's job. Like, that's a product marketing problem, right? And
100%.
for those, so for those who are listening, Brandon's shaking his head. So how do they give that feedback in a way that's supportive rather than whiny, right? Where it's like, product marketing does just fucking close it and, eat your shit, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I might be a little bit different in that, like, I started my career off in sales, so I have a lot of empathy towards sales. I've read way more sales books than I have read like marketing or like positioning books or anything like that. So like, I really hope that your product marketer has just a lot of empathy for you as the seller. But if you don't have that, that's not to say you can't work with your product team. Like, I think your product team, your product marketers want to hear what's happening out there in the market. So it could be like, here's a recording of a recent sales call, right? Like, actually let them listen to, it's like, 12 minutes in, here's what happened. Listen to this. This happens a lot. Like, how can we work together to overcome this? I really do think product marketing and your your frontline salespeople should be in constant communication. So whether, I don't care if that's like a,
How do you define constant communication? Like, what does that cadence look like? Is it literally every day messaging each other? Is it once a month, once a quarter, once a week? There's some type of meeting or forum. What does that look like in your mind?
yeah. So like at the very minimum, once a month. I would say most frequently I see teams talking with their product marketing teams, but like bi-weekly, every other week.
And what about for the sales leader?
I want them talking weekly, to be honest. Like, I don't care if it's like, if there is like a set agenda and it's like, what, I don't have anything to talk about this week. Well, of course you fucking do. Like, get on the team or get on the phone and tell them, this is what I've been hearing, or this big deal closed because of this, or we keep running into this objection, or whatever that might be. I don't think my team is good enough at telling this story, or they're not ready to sell this product yet, or whatever it is. Like, that there are things that you as a sales leader should be telling your product marketer and product marketers out there. If you're not getting this from your sales leader, go ask them any of those questions that I just listed there. Yeah. Like, there's plenty to talk about. And then I think it's also really important to talk to the reps themselves too. Like, I'm always like, if I haven't heard from a rep in, honestly, maybe about a month, then I'll just reach out and say, hey, we haven't actually talked for a little bit. Like, let's jump on a quick 30-minute, 15-minute phone call. Like, what are you hearing out there? Or like, honestly, a lot of work that I do is on like case studies and references and testimonials. You get great insight into that.
It's also a great way to give a sales rep, a little extra responsibility. They're always looking to grow their skill set. Here's where their opinion matters. They can learn how to work cross-functionally around teams. So like sales leaders, if you're like, that sort of promotion path, which we're going to sort of get into with Brandon, or career pathing, it's a great way for those people who want to do it to sort of test the waters and see what it's like to actually work versus complaining. Right? Not that all salespeople complain, but like, it's a great thing, and then they feel more valued as an employee.
Yeah, totally.
You mentioned, you started in sales, right? And then you switched to the dark side.
The dark side, yes.
What was your sales career like? What did you like? What did you learn? How's it helped you in product marketing? Like,
it's a really unique career path. You don't typically see people go from sales to sales leadership to all of a sudden go into product marketing.
Right.
I think if you asked a sales leader or salesperson who was maybe considering like getting out of sales and like where do I go next? I don't think product marketing would be a typical answer. It'd be like sales ops, maybe account management, recruiting, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I'm super interested in this.
Yeah, so I started off like my first real job. I call it a real job at a school. Is that like an SDR? Of course, we didn't call it SDRs back then, but I took a job at a company just kind of hoping to get into that company, and they're like, "Yeah, we have this sales position open for you." So I was like, "Okay, this seems interesting. Yeah, sure, why not?" And then ended up doing that for 6 months, moved up to an AE, carried a bag for a bit, for a few years. And then I always, at that time, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to build my sales muscle because I want to start my own company someday. Because I mean, in previous life, I was a health coach, I was a nutritionist, I was a certified trainer. I always wanted to start a health and wellness business. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to learn the sales side of things, and I actually ended up loving it. It was a great company. It was a great product. It was a great team, and I kind of really fell in love with sales. But then, how I made the transition to marketing, I met the head of marketing at that company, and she was a Marketo ninja. She was like the Marketo champion, and she's like, marketing is very scientific. Like I know that if I put in $1 over here, 40 days later, it's going to come out $1.42. But if I put in $1 over in this other section, like 20 days later, it's going to come out $1.20, and I really have to weigh like where do I want to put my money. And she really made marketing a science for me. So that's when I actually made the move over to marketing. And every marketing job I've had, like I've gotten along with the sales team really well, just because I had that background. Like I was in sales, I knew what they were going through. And I view marketing, like marketing's job really is there to support sales, make sales easier, right? They're there to make sales easier. And I think if you take that approach, you're not going to make enemies with sales, right? Like any team that I've come on and I told them that's what I think my job is, that they're like, yeah, we love you. Sure, come on.
That's also an uncommon answer in my experience, and one that I'd be more than happy to go work with and alongside.
Yeah, hell yeah. So
you mentioned starting as an SDR. We've had other marketers on here before who believe the SDR org should report into marketing and not sales. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
So I like them reporting to marketing because I have a little bit more control over that. So, but honestly, I don't know. I kind of take a Trish Bertuzzi answer to this. It's like, I don't care. Like who has more passion, who has more skill, who has more like ability to run that SDR team. I actually ran an SDR team for a little bit myself at the Engagio days, and like my number was more closely aligned with the SDR number, which is pipeline, and I have a lot more control over how they're qualifying, how they're being developed, how they're being trained, their career paths. One common objection I hear from sales reps that the SDR team should be under sales is just the career path. But I don't think anyone's under any delusion that a sales development rep might become a salesperson after that, right? I think that's crazy to see, just because they're under marketing, that they might not take a sales role next.
Yeah, like, I agree with that. That's good. That's a good point. Do you think that the CRO chair is should be open to people who are heads of marketing as well as heads of
yes, 100%. Look, like a CRO with a sales background who's running marketing is just a sales guy running marketing. I don't see
meaning equally as qualified or equally as clueless as a marketing person running sales.
Yeah, equally as clueless. No, I think that's fair. That is very fair. Yeah. But like, yeah, so many times when I see a CRO with a sales background, It's just a sales guy now running marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still have aspirations to build your own company? And do you feel better prepared now that you've spent at least the last year in the marketing side of the house after having years of experience in sales?
Yeah,
All these different buckets, and now you've spent a good chunk of time in at least two of the disciplines, if you will, that would fall under like founder expertise.
Yeah, totally. I think eventually someday, maybe this is probably 5-10 years out. I think I have a lot to learn yet because, doing sales and then, running demand gen previously, and now I'm on the more strategic side of marketing. I think I have more to learn on marketing and leadership. And, I honestly, I think the best sales rep and the best marketers understand business better than anyone else. So
Wait.
I think I've,
You think you need to do more before you start your own business?
not necessarily. I don't know. You're right.
No.
You're right.
Yes or no answer.
Fuck.
Well, it's interesting because what you said, Brandon, was like you got more to learn before you do that. But the thing is, like, you could run the risk of always having that answer.
That's true. That's true.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
Rick could say that. I could say that.
That's sort of where I'm going, because I sit here and I go, I didn't know fuck all about marketing and branding and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
we still don't.
Right. So like, don't over engineer yourself.
That's
right?
true. That's fair.
That's my advice. Now, I can also appreciate, like, as a nutritionist, and those things are very scientific, and you want to get as precise as you can, down to calories burned, calories eat, sugar intake, all those things. I can see that being a big piece of this, but don't let it don't let it prevent you from starting something, right? So
No, that's true.
and
I
Howard and the RingDNA team. We're not trying to get Brandon to quit.
yeah, exactly.
I know Howard. Howard, yes, he wants you to work there and he loves you, but he wants people to follow their passions. Like, he's very.
That is true. That's one thing I really appreciate about Howard and the team.
That whole organization over there is all about being happy at what you do, right?
Yep.
Those kinds of things. So you got to go for it, man. Stop.
I think, I think when the right thing comes along, like, I'll know it and I'll be ready. But there's no burning to, like, there are some entrepreneurs out there who are just like always itching to like build their own thing or do their next thing. I don't think that's quite me, but it's not me to just sit around and always just like work for someone else,
I would agree. I think I was more like you, and it just sort of fell in my lap. And Scott,
yeah,
I know Scott well enough to say that he's always wanted to do what he's doing and work for himself, and he just had to sort of get to that place financially.
Yeah, I risk adverse a little bit. Like, took my time, but I definitely always knew that I was going to go this particular route.
What did I always love asking this? What did your parents think you were going to be growing up?
What did my parents think I was going to be? That's a good question. Like, when I was really young, geez, I don't know, like maybe a farmer, because my dad, his family, they're all farmers. Like, he's the first one to actually put himself through college. So whenever we went back to Iowa, like, the farm was my favorite freaking place to be. I loved the farm so much, and I have a lot of aunts and uncles who are still farmers, or like they own a hog operation, like, thousands of hogs, and they're making great money doing that too.
What did you like doing on the farm? What was one of your favorite activities?
Driving the tractor.
Well, that makes sense.
Everybody loves doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
You still enjoy that, I think, as an adult.
Yeah, that never gets old.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What and were they surprised that you decided to go into business, or were they kind of realized it later? Like,
I think they always knew I was like pretty ambitious. I've always been one to do whatever the hell I wanted, like move out or move across the country or whatever, whenever I wanted to. So I don't think I would say they were that surprised when I was just like, all right, like, I'm right after school, I went out to the East Coast. It's like, all right, I'm going to work in New York now. See you later,
Got it. Got it. So we need to start moving to wrap up, but we're going to give a quick shout out to our sponsors and ask our question of, what can we do for you? What questions do you have for us? But quick shout out to Vidyard, Lead 411, Salesforce Sales Cloud, and of course Gong.io, the game changer in sales intelligence, which we're always happy to have their support. So Brandon, what can we do for you?
Well, can I ask one question then to make maybe one request?
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. So how can product marketers work better with sales?
Oh, that's a good question.
Go ahead.
I think for me, it's all about use cases and case studies and understanding that value of always being able to say, hey, everybody, here's something we've heard from somebody, I think that's one thing. I think customer quotes are huge. Like these are very tactical things, right? Like how can we do this? Here's some customer quotes we're allowed to use versus the ones we aren't allowed to, you can say anonymously, but you can't mention their name, those things are the things that I think sales is always looking for. And it's one of those things where the more you give back to sales, because we're so selfish, the more you'll get back from them, right? It'll be easier for you to be able to say, hey, can I ask you some questions? When you're sort of always making sure they have the things that matter, right? The case studies, the use cases, the customer quotes. Hey, we just heard that someone's using it this way. We'd love to have a meeting with a couple of salespeople and see how we could articulate the value of that and
Totally.
those kinds of things. So
one quick thing on that. Sales reps, I know you want like numbers and stats and percentages, like you want actual hearts. And sometimes that's hard for product marketer or like marketing to deliver. Instead of just going like pounding your fists on the table, give me stats. Like maybe sit down with them and like, it'd be cool to have this sort of stat. How can we figure that out?
Right. Or learn why it's hard to get those stats.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Like I know every time I'm doing a case study or a testimonial or anything with a customer, like I'm pushing for those. But a lot of times like customers is like, I'm not willing to say that, or, we're not quite fully ready to, shout out that stat yet, or, we can't fully attribute that to your solution because, we also bought Salesforce at the same time, or like whatever, right? Which I hate, but it's the truth.
I would add three things. Just communicate more often.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know you talked about the cadence that you felt was right. And I agree with you, but I can't even tell you how many times I talk to sales leaders and they never have conversations with anybody in product at all.
Yeah. At
all. So communicate more often, better align on the messaging, which comes from better communication. I have clients, and I've been in this position myself, where product marketing is talking about particular features or aspects or new releases, and I see it and I'm like, well, that doesn't fucking help me at all, because we never had a conversation and you're kind of pitching something that you think there's value around, but in practicality it's useless, and I would rather have information about this other thing, right? So just aligning on the messaging. And the last one is a little bit selfish and perhaps controversial, and you might throw your microphone at me, but move faster.
Yeah.
Move faster. I mean, because you've been in the seat, when you're a sales leader or an AE, and Richard said, like, we want things done now and yesterday. I think too often the engine and the revolutions per minute in product and in marketing, it's not at the same speed as a lot of sales orgs.
Yeah.
And so that can injure and fracture the relationship a bit. If there's a need for something and, days turn into weeks, turn into months, and then the thing shows up, it's like, Brandon, I needed that in March, bro. And
yeah.
It doesn't even help me now, right?
Yep.
So move faster. So those would be the three things that I would request.
I think product marketers probably could definitely work on all three of those things for sure.
No.
All right. Well, here's the one ask for you and your audience. If you know any, great demand gen marketers, ABM marketers, account, like enterprise account executives, we are hiring. So check out.
Good. I love that.
We are hiring right now.
What's the best way for them to connect with you, Brandon, as well as with RingDNA, if anybody's interested in any of the open roles there?
Yeah, totally. So ringdna.com. And then me particularly, I'm relatively active on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn, say hello, say you heard me on the podcast, and I'll accept your
mention
request.
this podcast, you definitely get taken to the top of the stack.
Exactly. Otherwise, if it's a generic request, chances are I'll probably ignore it.
Yeah.
I'll ignore it.
Well, good to catch up, Brandon. Thanks
Gentlemen,
so much.
appreciate it.
It's been fun,
Absolutely.
man.
We'll have to not wait another 5 years.
I'll see you in 6 years when you've started your nutrition business.
Yeah, there you go.
Your consultant.
There you go, yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.